government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie.
Okay, so welcome back for part 2. Now, we're aware a lot has gone on. It's already been 24 hours since this debate was aired, and the consensus is the majority of people, left and right, are all saying Kamala Harris won this debate, and those Republicans and Trump supporters who are critiquing Donald Trump are also saying that these 2 hosts were biased also. So we can pick this apart, and that's why we're here for part 2. So let me press play and let's continue to watch.
I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban, because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the state. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her...
Unfortunately, this is one of the criticisms that Trump has received. And what I have said, I found him to be quite reactive and defensive. And instead of sort of doing what Kamala Harris did throughout this debate, was, the condescending looks, keeping eye contact, and being quite scripted and very much on point, and not being reactive and defensive.
Boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, "I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black." I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words. So
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
Honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was he owned land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families.
I was going to say I'll type my comments, but I'm not live. I'm not live streaming. I usually do. This is recorded because, life. I'm trying to fit this in. Oh, man. The problem for Trump is that Kamala Harris is prepared. And that was a brilliant prepared response. And what can he come back with? Let's see.
Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young Black and Latino boys who...
He's listening, but he's not listening because he's not looking at her. And it's not, I've had so much commentary, and all of us have had plenty of commentary by now. And we see how important the women's vote will be for this election. And considering Taylor Swift has endorsed Kamala Harris, one analyst, pundit's take on this is Trump is behaving like a woman's first divorce lawyer, her husband's divorce lawyer, not looking, not making eye contact, not paying attention, not listening, not understanding. And that's going to help somebody vote for Kamala Harris. So that's one opinion. There are many. Let's continue.
were innocent, the Central Park Five, took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first Black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other.
He's not looking. He's looking at perhaps the host or the camera, but he's not looking at her.
I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people, knowing that regardless of people's...
And because she's looking at him, he looks like the petulant child that is just refusing to engage. It's just not great. Trump's team needs to change, do better.
color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman. She says, she is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time's up.
I want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country, one who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always despair.
You know, he rolled his eyes because he's like, uh-oh, she's about to talk about what's possible, what's past, burdened by what was then, and then what is in the future.
Encouraging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President Trump, we have to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund.
Unfortunately, this repeated, I need to respond to this, comes across badly. Again, it's defensive. He's defending his position, or he's trying to get another jab in. And it kind of looks like, you know, when you're watching a sort of a martial arts or boxing fight, and they're in the ring, and the referee calls it, but one wants to keep going, and they don't necessarily win favor with the audience. That's what this looks like.
On the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need to
President
respond.
Trump,
No, the
President
former
Trump,
president has
no,
said
I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to respond to.
I'm sorry. We're
I
going
just need
to move on,
respond
Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this is
multiple
now
times.
your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it.
Kamala's like, yeah, it's okay. She'll get to it for me.
So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care. Always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this. I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones, too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let
Oh, she's so calm and collected, and Trump is making these sort of value judgments, but not backing them up. It's like you can say someone's bad, but you've got to explain why. And if you can't explain why because you don't have the time, you need to stick to your point.
it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with
That host is quite challenging right there. Do you see? And look at Kamala's face. She's like, yeah, that's right. That's right. So that host right there immediately exposed her bias and she challenged him. And that's not quite right. So it just shows that perhaps this was also sort of like, well, as people are saying and alleging that this was very much in Kamala Harris's favor because the hosts are biased. But perhaps debate 2, if that happens, should be on different ground.
with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking, and then
At this point, because it's a debate, usually the host would say, no, could you please just respond to the point? And we're not going back. But
this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, let's just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times.
he's never debated her. He literally just has no reference. It's only what he might have seen or what he thinks, what his sort of like judgment is of her. So this experience is new for him, and it's clear he just wasn't prepared.
He tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it,
Vice
pass its
President
prologue
Harris,
in
thank
terms
you.
of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a
She
lot
made a
of
mistake.
She banged out the points, though. She might have made a mistake. Let's see.
Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It was all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get.
President
People
Trump.
are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes
Why?
growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened.
And the thing is, it's like if you've got undecided voters, what are they going to be thinking right now? Yeah, this dude doesn't really listen. Why is he going to listen to us? Look at how he's engaging with this. Trump, why did you do this?
Under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine?
He's jumped. And now she can condescend because she's like, oh, here we go. And then what happens? People are looking at her face and they're thinking, is this guy speaking sense? That's the trouble with this.
In China. Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling.
You see the tone, his tone keeps, his volume increases. She keeps it very steady and calm. She's a prosecutor. If it was Biden or somebody else, then, Trump could perhaps compete on the informal kind of scale, but you've got a trained, seasoned prosecutor who's just going to deliver point by point by point, whether or not it's true or legitimate or sincere is not the point here. We're talking about debating skills. We're not talking about political preference, just so we are clear.
Our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
And the trouble is, right, he's breaking a sweat visibly. You can see that. You can see that Kamala Harris is just so calm. There's an ad. Let's quickly just whiz. Do you remember when you used to say whiz the ads? Or maybe that was just my upbringing with my siblings.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back.
The future, the past, one that doesn't. I bet if she wanted to do some choreography with this, it would go future, past, don't take us back. We want to go future, not. Sorry, I just can't help, because you see, she's using this kind of language that is quite evocative, it's emotive, and it sticks in people's brains, whether negatively, positively, but it does. It's like the future, the past. Don't take us back. We want to go forward.
Back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us, and we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of
My thing about this, we have so much in common than what separates us. It's another binary if you think about it. And let me explain that. So if we are so focused only on the things that we have in common, what we don't end up doing is addressing the things that are separating us, because those things still haven't been addressed. So when you are in any kind of a leadership role or strategic decision making role, purely focusing on the consensus parts and not on the disagreement part means you leave out a ton of stuff, and you're only creating this kind of meaningful boundary around what we have in common, what we agree on. So what you're doing is you're missing all this other stuff out, which actually could potentially, remember, like, let's look at it in terms of political electoral systems, like first past the post. You know, you could have election results in the UK, where more people voted against, but because there were so many of those votes that were in sort of lots of different interests and minorities, that's why so few, yet a majority, was sort of won by this one or two, whatever, interest parties. It's the same sort of thing. It's like, but we're not addressing all of these others. We're only focusing on, well, the portion of people that agree the most. But what about 75%, 60%, or just 50%? It could be 50-50. And that, to me, I think, is not a great way to look at things, to talk about things. We have more in common than divides us, but we need to get to the divisions. You need to address divisions in order to come up with much better policy, much better ideas, especially on the political campaign stage. So I'm not a fan of this kind of, adage, like we have more in common divides us. It helps simplistically in some cases when we're dealing with conflict or sort of like a lack of community cohesion, or if there's social unrest. But when it comes to policy and winning elections, we need something a lot more thoughtful, much more in the weeds. You need to get in the weeds, and you can't just focus on, well, we agree on this, so the majority wins. Well, it's not even a majority, you see. It's just the most amount of people that, the agreement that has the most sort of consensus, that or the idea or the interest that has the most consensus. But that doesn't mean that it's a majority. We got there in the end.
that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat?
I mean, that's pretty brilliant speech writing.
The only thing I ever ask them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to.
Oh no, oh no, oh no. He only knows how to argue and debate. in terms of, right, let me just take a swing. This is the part where you just get to, like, there's no one else in the ring. You just get to flex. Like, do that thing that bodybuilders do. You know, when their bodybuilders are performing, they're not fighting with anyone. They're just flexing and they're doing all of their thing. Like, mate, this is where you do that. But you're using this time to attack. That was what the debate was for. This is your time to deliver your speech and make it meaningful, not defensive, not reactive. Oh.
To do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been
That's a fair criticism, because she's not an incumbent in the sense that she's not the existing president. She's a vice president, but she's still in office, in elected office, if you know what I'm saying. So this point actually does have to be made. So there's going to be an element for the new person, even though they've been president before, the new person to need to critique. That's got to be part of their speech. So I will give him that, but let's see how the rest rolls out.
there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they laugh. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
Ouch. Okay, so just to sum up, Donald Trump, if there's a debate too, then what you need to do is probably be a lot more scripted and be a lot for a different Kamala in the next one, because she's shown you the prosecutor side. She may now sort of flex and show you a different way. Number 3, stick to points, not a defense. But there you have it. That's part 2. That's my take on why I believe Trump lost this debate. I'll see you for more. I'd love to hear from you. Take care.